Thanks everybody for being patient with me. I came from a high school that was just a little bit larger than Olney. We had 84 students when I was there, 24 in my graduating class. And when I went to a private liberal arts school in Wisconsin, I realized that I had one of the best educations of all of the other students in the university that I went to. And I had that opportunity to see it again when I went to a graduate program. In the past 3 years, I studied at Yale University, and I was the first person in my school to go to Yale University, from my high school, first graduate. But I don't think that there's anything holding back people from the region where I come. We just didn't realize that we had that opportunity, that we had that capacity, and no one inspired that in us. And I thank the mentors and the other people that I met at a very young age working at the Land Institute. It's a small, organic, sustainable farming institute. And I was able to first visit there when I was 16 years old. So I do apologize for many of the students here did see our chocolate presentation that I did with Roxana on Wednesday during their classes. But we're going to follow into some other things to give you. I'd like to inspire you that with what we've learned in the Amazon, you can more than start a movement here with Olney. You can make something that brings acclaim to the school and also encourages people throughout this region to live more sustainably. Okay? So first of all, with the Amazon note, what you see is we have a map right here of Ecuador. This is close to Colombia, it's close to Peru, it's one of the smaller nations. This entire country is about the size of Nevada. However, they are politically the most high biodiversity entity in the world. So to give you an example of the region where we work in the Amazon, they have almost as many bird species as the continental US, okay? And that would be an area smaller than this county, would have as many bird species as for the size of the continental US, okay? When you think of the Appalachia mountain range and all of the tree species that are composed within this entire region, you will find higher biodiversity in the size of 2 football fields where I'm working in the Amazon. So as a tropical biologist, I was very interested in trying to work with people to help make sure that they could save their rainforests and provide for their needs of their families. And okay, I admit, I grew up eating cheap chocolate that was probably sourced from regions in Africa where children right now, still today, are forced to work in those cocoa groves. But that was all I knew, that was all I was familiar with. And I never thought that I would be standing here today telling you about a chocolate cooperative in the Amazon. I was a biologist, I didn't care about marketing, I didn't care about having an income. I committed myself to the environment, and one of my life goals is to die penniless because I'm not really concerned about savings. And I found a lot of partnership with the people in the Amazon. When I first showed up, I did interviews with the farmers and basically just asked kind of the parent-teacher organization how we could work together so they could have rainforests in the future. And the first thing they said was, eliminate the intermediaries. Find us direct markets to other countries, help us process something so that we can get a higher value for it, and if anything else, help us improve our production so that by the time we get it to harvest, our crops don't rot, okay? Now, many of the slides that you're gonna see, we've managed to accomplish this, but it wasn't that I came there with an idea and said, this is what you're gonna do. This is what the people from the area knew they needed, and they had recognized, but they didn't have the education or the capital, they didn't have the funding available, they didn't have some of the technology. But every year with internet, with infrastructure, they have more roads, they have more electricity, and now they have the opportunity through Google Translate to communicate directly with their foreign markets. So many of the obstacles that these people were given in the past and told, I think they were excuses so they wouldn't be able to succeed and get the full income from their products. Right now they've realized that those barriers are not necessarily permanent, that they can find a way around them. And I encourage you to start to look for barriers that you have that are holding you from living sustainably or making sure that this this school continues in the future and find ways to overcome them. So what we have here is a slide of how these cocoa growers from the Amazon were recognized as the first indigenous cooperative in the world to make their own chocolate. And one point, I'm very excited about it. At the same time, it's disconcerting because there are 45 million producer families across the world of cocoa growers that don't make their own chocolate. And so I think it's so great to see what we've done, and we can get press, publicity, we can get a product to a fantastic chain of stores like Whole Foods. But my goal is to try and teach other people that they can do the same thing and not just focus on what we've accomplished. So these are the small villages that make up the Cayeti Cooperative. There are scores of villages, but they managed to divide themselves up in 3 different zones, so they're covering. Their total land holding is over 100,000 acres. Okay, so if you think working with size, and these are people that have only about 4 roads in the region, they don't have cellular telephones, and even a handful of people when they're in their village. So to encourage you to say, hey, you can do this, I mean, I'm going to give you an example of a pretty extreme situation and say you can definitely do better than they have, okay? The cooperative first started with handcrafts. It was part of their culture. It was not perishable. It was easy to export. There were demand in other countries. So we started selling to different fair trade stores throughout the U.S. and basically just found a way not to really standardize that everything was the same, but to give them quality control so that it wouldn't fall apart, and also a brand. And I will say one of the advantages of getting a large group of people to work together is then you reduce all of your costs for promotion, for advertising, and one of the small problems within the United States is everyone wants to own their own business, and that's great, but you have a very limited market that you can reach as one small family working with your local business. What they tend to do is survive, do a little bit better, and buy out the neighbor. In the Amazon region, everybody wants to work together and they want to all share their bounty. And it makes it very simple to try and work with a cooperative and have people cooperate and share their incomes. And I think it may be more challenging for you to do the same thing in the U.S., but there are many cooperatives, okay? Sun-Kissed Oranges, that's a cooperative. Welch's, Organic Valley, which is one of the biggest milk producers across the region, and they're out of Wisconsin. And then you also have Calbo Cheese, which is up in the Northeast, Agrimark, which is a very large cooperative, hundreds of farms across the Northeast. And then you may not be familiar, but Ocean Spray is also a cooperative of growers as well. So from these small little farms in the Amazon, they take their harvest, and they're going to harvest their cocoa pods by hand. Then they have quite a wide varietal of different species. They'll collect those in the baskets, break open the pods, and then they'll bring their harvest together and they will take it to one of the collection centers. Now, in the top right-hand corner of the slides, you can see the price that the farmers used to get before they formed a cooperative. And this is going to be a lot like in this area. How many pennies, or how many, maybe a small fraction of what you see, the $4 to $10 a pound meat cuts in the market, the farmers in this area are not going to get anywhere near that. Okay, so our farmers were getting 25 cents a pound for their harvest. When they first formed the cooperative, in that initial harvest, they got 45 cents a pound. Okay, so they nearly doubled their income by bringing their harvest together and getting it to a port where it could be exported to other countries. Then they found out that they could get much higher income if they dried it in little solar greenhouses. So when it was a rainy day, their beans didn't get moist again. They didn't have to collect them constantly. And even on a really bright sunny day, that greenhouse gained energy and it continued to warm and dry the beans all night. Now the final step that they have now with their high income is organic certification. But you'll notice one of the biggest incomes the farmers can get is when they process it into a product at a local factory. It's 4 hours away by car. You have the opportunity here to work with the Barnesville Butcher Facility, which is, I believe, USDA certified, so you could market those products to anywhere within the region. And our story is one of the few chocolate in the world that the farmers actually get to taste their own chocolate. And I think what I encourage you to do is to take this example and take it to a new step from this area, okay? So when I was first contacted by Kirsten and looking into the potential for this event, I went ahead and I called some offices, and I encourage you to follow up and do the same. Maybe my initial research was inaccurate. Maybe I didn't dig deep enough. I don't live in this area. I don't have an opportunity to interview hundreds of farmers. And I basically was in Ecuador to and from part of the time and also finishing my grad school classes. So I admit I didn't put hundreds of hours into this, which may be necessary to really start off a great project. But I spoke with the Farm Bureau office. I encourage you to meet with more of the people that work at the County Extension Office, okay? That's something that's funded by your tax dollars, and it's not only a fantastic link to the research that has been done, but there are funds available. Through the recent Farm Bill, most of the NRCS offices throughout the country have additional funds for organic farming and for certification. Some of them are in the form of loans and some are in the form of grants. So you could contact and work with your local 4-H club, the Future Farmers of America, and get to know what resources exist in the area and work together with them. I think it's great to be a leader, but I think it's also more effective when you have other people that you're working alongside. Okay, so grass-fed beef. I'm not sure if you're familiar with where the meat that you eat comes from, but over 90% of the beef in the market right now within the United States has animals that may have started grass-fed, but they go through a process called finishing, okay? Grass-fed certification means these animals ate just grass throughout their entire life, okay? Now the finishing process means, just a sec, skipped ahead. I don't know why it's skipped. Yeah, okay. So this is agricultural production in the region, okay? I'll go into finishing in a second. When I spoke with the offices here in Barnesville, they explained to me that you have very high populations of deer in Turkey, that there are hunters that come from the metropolitan area, but they don't pay for local permits. They're not necessarily supporting the income of the community, and a lot of times there may be too many people in a small area, and any of the local landowners are concerned they might get shot, okay, or they might have their own animals shot by the deer hunters from the city. That, I mean, they've had some small steer that were killed in the area because someone thought they were a deer, okay? So it is something that you might be able to make an income from hunting licenses and promoting that, but what I encourage you is to really look into if most of the beef in this area or most of the income are grass-fed beef, then you could do something to make sure that you get certification and they're not selling it to the feedlots, okay? So you also have hay crops, you have apple orchards, you got a lot of other small industries. But when I first interviewed the farmers in the Amazon, I was thinking about maybe selling medicinal plants to other countries. And they said, hey, you know, all of us have a little bit of coffee and a little bit of cocoa. Let's start there. It's the easiest, it's the most simple for us. And that's one reason why I do recommend the grass-fed beef auction, because there's a huge market in the United States, and I'll get to that in a second, okay? The Amish vegetables market, if you do want to work with vegetables, you have to have fantastic fences or traps to get the deer and to keep them out of your vegetables, because they're very appealing to a roaming animal that can jump over 8 feet. Okay, now a feedlot. Typical beef in the United States, the animals for the last 3 months of their lives are finished, okay? This gives you a high fat content. The animals are very unhealthy. They're given grain. Cows have a ruminant stomach, and they have that digestive system specifically to eat very tiny amounts of grain and mostly grass to break down the cellulose content.